Welcome to design 14 for our kinship blocks. These blocks are blocks 53 to 56 and I have put them in my usual setup of two large blocks. I'm just going to spin this one around, and two rectangle blocks. So these ones have lots of large open spaces, so the texture on the quilts will be seen really nicely with these ones. But yeah, this one today we are going to go back to and draw from tutorials 4 and 5. So in those we did a half circle and a teardrop shape, but in the half circle we did close it in at some point and create a little bit of a teardrop, which preempted tutorial 5 where we did the teardrop. This time what we're going to do is the teardrop, but we are going to repeat that, and it creates a bit of we'll call it repeating teardrop, but it can look a little bit like I guess a peacock feather in some ways without the feathery part. So what we are going to do is create a background fill. We're not going to go overly small on this, but you certainly can, and I'll include a photo of a quilt that I did do this on in the background, quite small, and but this is how you do it. So I'm just going to move those out of the way and zoom in here on my square, which would be my block. Alright, so we have done this shape before, so once again we're drawing on the shape that we had, and I'm not sure, thank you. My light just went out for some reason. So we're going to do, this is the teardrop shape that we did in tutorial 5. What we're going to do is we're going to do that shape, and then we're going to repeat it, and we're going to repeat it again. So we're basically bouncing backwards and forwards, but we're coming back to this point here. Now, with this design, keep in mind that you will end up with what we call thread buildup, and that's because your lines of quilting are very close together, or in some cases they will be on top of each other, and so you end up with your thread color showing more. So if you are using a high contrast thread, which you'll see on my practice piece, it'll be really noticeable. Otherwise, let's just move down here so that I can show you. That one, bounce and bounce. From here we're going to just travel back up a little bit and come off in a different direction. Now that one I didn't travel, but I came outwards, so I've created a bit of space, but that space is now taken up by the fact that I have come back around. So I can travel up the side of this one here and come off in another direction. And that's the whole point. On that one I did an extra layer, which you can certainly do if you find that you need to get to a certain point. So this is a version of traveling. So that's something you'll hear me talk about. If you need to travel, if you find yourself stuck but you actually want to get over to this side, then that's quite easy, and I want to fill this space, so I'm going to go there. If you get to this point and you actually think, I actually want to be over here, just echo it again, travel again, and fill that space. Okay, now you can see where my pen marks are. You can see here that we've got lots more color showing here where the points are than we do here where the single lines are. This is what we call thread buildup, and it's it can be a feature. If you don't want it to show, then use a matching thread color to the background of your quilt or your block. But if you want to make that a feature, that certainly can add interest to the background of your quilt. This is an excellent background design. So once again, we're going to do that traveling across the block so that we can cover everything. Alright, so let me start drawing. I will probably start with a teardrop in the corner, and again we probably want to get to the point where we don't have them all going in the same direction. And they will, we still need to travel around that, around the block, but you can certainly add interest by changing the direction. Alright, so you get the idea, and that's the effect that you get. So the ways to travel are, if you need to move away from your first section, you can travel up the side of it and start off in a completely different direction, or you can come up beside it and create a little loop. And so that's your initial teardrop shape. That was a bit rounder than it might be. I've ended up here, so I can actually do another one. So whichever of those works for you, and you can combine them throughout so that you can travel across your block. Alright, so again with the marking for this one, I am probably just going to do the base travel line so that I've got a bit of a guide. I will not actually go ahead and mark all of this. This is actually quite organic and just happens on the fly. So if you need to slow down your movements so that you are not moving your fabric too fast in order to get around your block, then that's what we'll do. We won't actually go too fast because you need time to think. So, and if that's the case, then stop. You've got heaps of stop points with this pattern. So stop at any of those things, work out the next few, stop again and work out the next few, and you'll work your way across the quilt reasonably quickly. All right, let's get quilting. Alright, let's get quilting with our repeating teardrops. So we are going to, I've done my locking stitches, I've got my contrast thread so you can see clearly. We're going to do our first teardrop. We're coming back to basically where we started. If you don't come exactly back to where you started, it's okay. Then we're going to do that same shape a little bit bigger, and then bigger again. Now at this point I'm not going to travel all the way down that side of that block, mainly because I don't need to. It gives the effect of the design, and it will mean that I can come up this way. If I want to travel along that seam, sorry, that previous stitching line, now I'm going to come back to here. I'm actually going to cross over here and put my next teardrop shape in that gap. As I'm heading out there, I change direction slightly. Now I went over a little bit, but that's okay. This one I'm going to come back a fourth time because I want to get back to this space here. Now remembering, make sure your machine is going fast enough sometimes when I'm demonstrating it gets a bit noisy, so I don't always have it going fast enough. I should. If you find they're getting a little bit more rounded, that's okay as well. That's just a change in style. If you want to keep them taller and thinner, then that's your design that you're aiming for. Instead of coming and doing a fourth one there, I've come up beside it and now I'm going to add. Oh, getting caught on the safety pin. So whilst my initial row is all pretty much going upwards, I am trying to a bit of a change of direction. So I want to fill this space here, so I'm actually going to basically echo and then start another one. Stopping at my seam line so that I don't go over it. See what started as an echo line here became a new element. Now I need to come back in here and fill this. So as to why it's not going faster. It's because I had bumped my speed dial on my machine. Much better. You can see I echoed just in a little bit there. So basically I need to get out of this corner. And my bobbin has run out. I'll be back. Alrighty, let's keep going. All right, let's start a new direction. Come back and fill this space here. So. So you can see here where I was talking about the thread buildup, the color. I have got a few spaces here. I'm not overly worried about those. Probably wouldn't like them to be bigger than that, but I'm okay. Not too bad. All right. Oh, do you know what? I got confused between this line here and this line here. This is my practice block. So I have stopped at this line and I have all of this here to quilt. So let's carry on. Right, whilst that wasn't the greatest, it still worked. And you know what? I've still left one line that is meant to be the slashing. There's not meant to be part of the slashing. That's okay. This line here should have been quilted. I am not going back to it now. So we are going to carry on and move on to block 53. You need to stop, reposition your hands and work out where you need to go next, then that's what you should do. So I'm trying to keep mine a bit more longer than they are oval shape. They're round shaped, like a longer effect. So, sorry, phone call happening. And I'll keep going. There. And let's start. going to cover in any one at any one time. So if you do your spacing quite close together, then obviously you need to do more of the design, whereas if you make them not necessarily bigger, but your spacing bigger, then that will also cover more of your fabric as well. I guess it depends on the design you're after. Now, I've caught myself into a bit of a hole here, or quilted myself into a corner. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create another line here in between these two and get out of it. Slowly. I think I'm going to do one more over here, and then I need to head back and fill up the other corner. So echo that didn't quite work as well as I'd hoped. Now, I have this weird little bit in here. I can try and fill it with a small one, or I can do some echoing and get to here. I don't know whether you saw that. Echo there, and then get to here where I can add another. Probably should have come out just a little bit further. Right, now it's at this point I'm going to mention to you about fatigue, because if you notice at the beginning of my block, this is actually not too bad, but I've just done another big block as well, and then down here it's less good. It really is. So, and I've noticed that my arms will get tired, so my forearms, so it's a bit like, you know, sitting and writing an essay for 3 hours, you know, your arms get tired. So I'm going to take a break, give my arms a rest, and I'm going to come back and finish the next block in a little bit. All right, I've had a bit of a break, given my arms a bit of a rest, which means that and it comes from pushing down, and you're holding onto the fabric and holding onto the bed of your machine. Just stop my camera wobbling, and that can make the muscles tired. done an extra row in that one to fill that corner. Also did an extra row on this one. My seam will be there, so I wanted to fill that space. Also wanted to get over to this side. Need to go back over and fill this space. I did quite a bit bigger just to see the change. So I'll show you that in full in a minute. Here we have our practice piece for the repeating teardrops. So this obviously shows up really nicely on this fabric. Now, ultimately, you could probably work out someone's quilting path. So you can see I've gone up here, back down this way, filled in over here, come into this corner and up here. Remember, this was the one where I got my lines mixed up and it should have come to this line here, but that's okay. So you can work out by the direction the quilt path of the person who's quilted it, but ultimately it really is not the first thing that you see. And this one here is where I tried to go a little bit bigger than these ones. So there are less designs, but they're bigger, and they may have an extra echo around them. So that just shows you how you can also change up that design by changing the size. You can really see it between these two blocks here. So my back is a little bit, so I've obviously rushed at some point. Let me just come quite close to the camera here. And there you can see I've got a few instances where I've rushed a little bit, so I'm getting some pulling. So that is something to watch. So no rushing around corners, etc. So this is my colored blocks. You can see on the red, now this is a red and pink striped fabric. It actually creates quite an interesting texture. Yeah, get a bit of side light happening. You can see that quite nicely. But with the stripe and the thread build up, you get an interesting play with that fabric. Now, this design, I did notice, and I did comment earlier, that my hands, my forearms, got quite sore from the holding downwards. Now, I don't use the gloves. This might be a design where they would come in handy. I don't actually have any because, as I've said, I usually do most of this on the long arm, and the action is slightly easier. What I did find when my arms got tired and my hands got tired is that my quilting got messy. So if you choose this design, now I actually really like this design. I've used it in a number of quilts, but when my arms get tired and it gets messy, it's time to take a break. Time to take a break. Go and do something or other else. Do something different, do a different action, give your muscles a rest, and then come back to it. So that would be my recommendation. I don't know whether you can see that on the back. Maybe a little bit. There we go. So it actually looks quite cool. So they are our repeating teardrops. I hope you have fun. Just keep in mind a couple of things that I've mentioned that will make this easier for you. It is not difficult. You've done all this before. I'd love you to give it a go. If you do, tag me in it so I can have a look. See you in the next video.